Disclaimer: this content is only for mature audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. It was one of those slow, quiet afternoons that creep up when you're least expecting them. The kind where the house feels too still, the silence pressing against the walls like it's waiting for something to happen. My husband had just left on a weekend work trip, and I figured I'd finally have a few hours to myself. No noise. No questions. Just peace. I slipped into something comfortable and settled in with a cup of coffee, letting the calm settle over me. I didn't expect to hear footsteps behind me. Light ones. Not loud or rushed like someone trying to startle me, just soft enough to make me turn my head. It was my stepson, Jake. 22, tall, quiet, and always polite to the point of being shy. He'd come back home recently to save on rent while finishing school. I thought he was out with friends, but there he was, standing in the doorway, giving me a look I hadn't seen before. It wasn't rude or intense, just focused. Like he was trying to say something but didn't know where to begin. "Hey," I said, setting my mug down, unsure of why my heart suddenly felt like it skipped a beat. "Hey," he said back, his voice low, almost careful. "Didn't know you were home alone." I nodded, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear, trying to play it cool. "Your dad left this morning. I thought you were out." He stepped closer, not fast, just enough to close the space between us without making it feel too sudden. "I was," he said. "But something told me to come back." I laughed a little, nervous now. "Something, huh?" And then, without a word, he reached for my hand. His fingers wrapped around mine, warm and steady. Not a grab, not a tug, just a hold. I looked at our hands, then at his face. That same focused expression was there, but now, something else had joined it. A kind of vulnerability I hadn't seen in him before. It wasn't just physical. It was emotional. And in that moment, something shifted between us. Something that wasn't supposed to, but it did. The air got heavier, and neither of us said a word. That's when I felt the heat rise in my chest, the kind that makes you forget what you were doing a second ago. My breath hitched. My heart wasn't just beating faster, it was thudding. And he still hadn't let go. I don't know why I didn't pull away. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was the way he was looking at me, not with expectation, but with something that felt like longing. I knew this wasn't something I should encourage. I knew the line. But for a second, everything blurred. Then the front door rattled. And, just like that, everything changed. The sound of the front door rattling snapped us both out of the moment. I pulled my hand back quickly, heart racing, unsure if it was guilt or adrenaline, or both. Jake stepped back, glancing toward the hallway like he was expecting someone to walk in. But the door didn't open. No one came in. Maybe it was just the wind or a neighbor passing by. Either way, the moment had shifted. The stillness had cracked. I stood up, brushing invisible dust off my clothes, avoiding eye contact as I moved toward the window. Jake stayed quiet behind me. I could feel his presence, like a quiet hum in the background. He didn't leave, didn't make a sound. He just waited. "I should probably check on the laundry," I said, not even sure why those were the words that came out. It was just something to fill the air, something to say while I tried to sort out what had just happened. But Jake didn't respond right away. When he finally did, his voice was quieter than before. "You don't have to pretend like nothing happened." That stopped me. I turned around slowly. He was watching me, his arms at his sides, no smirk, no arrogance, just something soft in his expression that made it even harder to speak. And the truth was, I didn't know what to say. Because something had happened, and pretending it didn't would only make it more confusing. "Jake," I said gently, "this isn't something we should even talk about." "Why not?" he asked. "We didn't do anything wrong." He meant it. I could see it in his eyes. But just because something doesn't cross a line physically doesn't mean it doesn't stir up something that should have been left untouched. And that's exactly what this was, something we both didn't see coming, and now we couldn't unsee it. I sat back down on the couch, trying to steady myself. "Look, I know things are weird right now. With your dad gone all the time and you being back here, maybe it's easy to get lost in all of that. But this is a house, Jake. A family. I know, he said, walking slowly over to the edge of the coffee table and sitting on the arm of the chair across from me. That's why I'm confused. I didn't expect to feel this way either. I've been thinking about it for a while now. That hit harder than I wanted it to. You've been thinking about this? He nodded once. Since I came back. Since we started talking more. You actually listen to me. You remember what I like. You care. It's not just this. It's all of it. I looked at him, really looked at him. Not as my husband's son. Not as the quiet college kid who used to disappear into his room with headphones on. But as someone who had grown up into a man with thoughts, emotions, and a heart that apparently had gotten tangled up in mine. And maybe that scared me more than anything else. We sat there in the silence again. Only this time, it wasn't peaceful, it was heavy. Questions floated in the air between us, unspoken but loud. How far could this go? Should I tell his father? Should I shut this down completely? Or was it already too late? And just when I thought the moment had passed, Jake leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees, eyes still on me. What happens now? He asked. I didn't have an answer. The next few days felt different. Not in any obvious way, no one said anything, no lines were crossed, but the energy in the house had shifted. Every time Jake walked into a room, I felt it. A pause, a flutter in my chest I didn't ask for. And every time I caught him looking at me a second too long, I found myself looking back before I realized what I was doing. My husband, Tom, came back late Sunday night. Tired, distracted. He kissed me, asked if everything went smoothly while he was gone, then went straight to bed. I lied and said yes. I didn't tell him that his son had held my hand and looked at me like I was the only person who ever really saw him. I didn't tell him how that look made something stir inside me I hadn't felt in a long time. Monday morning, Tom rushed off to work like usual. Jake had no classes until the afternoon, so he stayed in, hanging out in the kitchen while I made coffee. We didn't speak much. Just simple things, milk's in the fridge, coffee's fresh, weather looks bad. But under the surface, every word felt loaded. You sleep okay? I asked, not looking up from the mug in my hand. Yeah, he said. You. I nodded, even though I hadn't. I'd been tossing and turning, thinking about what he'd said. About how he'd felt since moving back. About how I might have let things go too far without meaning to. Later that afternoon, I got a call from my friend Marcy. She wanted to catch up, so I invited her over for coffee. I thought a little normalcy might help clear my head. She'd been friends with me and Tom for years, and she always had a way of reading me even when I didn't want to be read. We sat on the patio while Jake was upstairs. Marcy talked about her new job, her niece's engagement, and then, just like I feared, her eyes narrowed a little. You seem off, she said. Everything okay at home? I faked a smile. Yeah, just tired. Long weekend. She took a sip of her drink, not buying it. Tired looks different on you. This is more like tense. Like something's not being said. I wanted to change the subject, but instead I asked, do you think people can catch feelings even when they know it's wrong? She raised an eyebrow. What kind of feelings? The kind that confuse you. The kind that start small, like a look or a conversation that feels too personal. She watched me for a long second. Is this about you and Tom? I hesitated, then said no. It's not. And that silence that followed said more than either of us wanted it to. That night, I found Jake in the backyard, sitting alone by the edge of the garden, looking out at nothing. I thought about going out there, saying something, anything, but I didn't. I stood at the window and watched instead, heart full of questions I wasn't ready to face. The days kept stacking on top of each other, each one heavier than the last. Nothing had been said between Jake and me since that strange afternoon, but the silence was louder now. It wasn't just awkward, it was loaded. Every glance felt like a question. Every close pass in the hallway carried a tension I couldn't ignore anymore. He'd linger in the kitchen when I was in there, or sit near me in the living room, but never too close, never enough to cross a line, but just enough to keep me wondering. Tom was still buried in work, coming home late, barely looking up from his laptop during dinner. I could have told him something was wrong. I could have brought it all out into the open, but every time I looked at him, I saw how tired he was, how checked out he'd become. Part of me felt angry, like maybe his absence was what created the space Jake had stepped into. Another part felt guilty for even thinking that. One night, after Tom had gone to bed, I found Jake in the kitchen again. He was pouring a glass of water, but paused when he saw me walk in. His eyes met mine like they always did, slow, steady, like he wasn't afraid of what I might see in them. I should have said goodnight and turned around, but I didn't. "You okay?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, then looked down at his glass. "Not really." I waited. He didn't explain. "I've been trying to forget what happened," he said after a moment. "But I can't." I stepped closer, leaning against the counter across from him. "I know. Me too." That admission felt like peeling something back. Like exposing a truth we'd both been covering up, pretending it didn't live in the room with us every day. The words sat there between us, real and undeniable now. "Do you think about it?" he asked. My heart jumped. "Yes." He took a breath, his fingers tightening slightly around the glass. "I don't want to mess anything up. But I also don't want to lie to myself anymore." I couldn't look away from him. The air felt thick, charged. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the wall clock, every sound amplified like the universe had gone quiet just for this moment. "You didn't do anything wrong," I said. "But this can't happen." His expression shifted, just a little. Hurt? Maybe. But more than that, it was frustration. Not with me, but with the situation. With the timing. With all the things neither of us could change. Suddenly, we heard footsteps upstairs. We both froze. Jake stepped back, and I turned toward the sink, pretending to rinse a cup. The footsteps passed. A door shut. We both let out a breath. But something had broken open between us. And now it couldn't be ignored. The silence after that night stayed with me. It followed me through every room, clung to my clothes, echoed in places where normal conversation used to live. Jake didn't bring it up again, and I didn't either, but that didn't mean it wasn't still between us. It was in the glances we didn't hold, the words we avoided, the way we left a little too much space between us when we passed in the hallway, like we were both afraid of what might happen if we got too close again. Then came the twist I wasn't ready for. Tom came home early from work that Friday, an unusual move for him. He looked restless, pacing the living room with his phone in hand. I asked him what was going on, and at first, he didn't answer. He just kept glancing between me and the window, like he was working something out in his head. Finally, he said, "I got a call from one of Jake's professors today." That alone made my stomach clench. He's been missing classes, skipping assignments. The guy said he's worried Jake's going through something, that he's distracted. I swallowed hard. "Did you talk to Jake?" Tom shook his head. "Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first." "Why me?" He looked right at me. "Because you two have been spending more time together lately. I thought maybe you'd notice something." I felt my face go warm. My hands instinctively went to the edge of the counter, gripping it just to stay grounded. He hasn't said anything to me. Tom studied me for a long second, and something about his expression changed. It wasn't anger. It wasn't suspicion, either. But it was something close to unease. Like he could feel that something wasn't right, but didn't know how to name it yet. That night, I heard raised voices coming from upstairs. Tom had gone to talk to Jake. I didn't mean to listen, but the door wasn't fully closed. I heard Tom's voice first, calm but firm, asking about school, about the missed classes, asking if Jake was drinking or doing something stupid. Jake's voice came next. Tense. Defensive. "You're never around, Dad. You wouldn't even know what's going on with me. Then tell me. That's why I'm here." There was a long pause. Then Jake said something I didn't expect. "Why don't you ask her?" My breath caught. I stepped back from the stairwell like it had burned me. "What's that supposed to mean?" Tom asked, voice sharp now. But Jake didn't answer. The next morning, things were quiet again. Too quiet. Jake didn't come down for breakfast. Tom left for work without saying much. And I sat there at the kitchen table, staring at my untouched coffee, knowing something had shifted again, and this time, it was out of my control. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed beside Tom, staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding like I was waiting for something to break. I kept replaying Jake's voice in my head. "Why don't you ask her?" He had put everything on the edge, and now I didn't know where it was going to land. By morning, Jake was gone. His room was empty. His phone left on the nightstand. Backpack missing. No note, no message. Just gone. Tom didn't say anything at first. He just stood in the hallway, staring into the empty space like he couldn't decide whether to be angry or worried. I stood beside him, trying to hold myself together, pretending I didn't already feel like the center had cracked beneath us. "He'll come back," I said, though I didn't know if I believed it. "He better," Tom muttered, jaw tight. "Because I'm not done with him." By noon, Tom left to file a report. Not a police one, just checking with friends, calling people. I stayed behind. My chest was tight the whole time, my mind racing. I kept wondering if he'd gone to escape, or if he thought he was protecting me. Hours later, just as the sun dipped low behind the trees, I heard the front door open. I turned the corner fast, and there he was. Jake. His face was tired, his eyes bloodshot. He looked like he hadn't slept either. His voice was low when he spoke. "I had to think," he said. "I didn't mean to scare anyone." I walked toward him, my pulse in my throat. "What were you thinking, Jake? Do you know what you just did to us?" "I do," he said. "And that's why I came back." I waited. The silence was deafening. "I told Dad," he said finally. "Not everything, but enough." I froze. "What did you tell him?" Jake met my eyes. "I told him I caught feelings for you. That it wasn't your fault. That you never crossed a line." My breath left my body. "What did he say?" Jake hesitated. "He asked me if I was in love with you." I didn't answer. At that moment, the door opened again. Tom walked in. He looked between us, tired, tense, but not explosive like I expected. He dropped his keys, then said, "We need to talk." All of us. We sat at the table, the three of us. Tom was quiet at first, his fingers locked together. "I've known something was off for a while," he finally said. I just didn't want to believe it. But Jake's not a kid anymore. And I haven't been the husband I should have been either. I opened my mouth, but he raised a hand. "I'm not blaming anyone. But we need to make a decision now about what this family is." Then came the twist. Tom reached into his bag and pulled out a yellow envelope. Inside were papers. Not divorce papers, but property deeds. "I bought a place upstate," he said. "For Jake. I was going to surprise him after graduation. I think maybe he should go now. Clear his head. Start something fresh." Jake looked stunned. I was too. Tom stood up. "You both need space." "And so do I." And just like that, the line was drawn. But the part none of us said out loud, that this space might not fix anything. It might just give the feelings more room to grow. Jake moved out the next day. No big scene. No drawn-out goodbyes. Just a few bags packed, a quiet hug from me at the front door, and one last look that said everything we couldn't. Tom helped him load the car without much small talk, just steady movements and a few short instructions about the new place. Jake didn't argue. He didn't linger. He just nodded, said thank you, and drove off before any of us could think too hard about it. The house felt hollow after that. Not empty, just quieter. Tom and I moved through it like we were adjusting to a new version of our lives, one we didn't quite plan for. We didn't talk about what happened right away. He stayed on the couch for a few nights, not because I asked him to, but because we both needed time. Space wasn't just for Jake. It was for us too. Eventually, we started talking again. Not about the situation directly at first. Just about small things: work, groceries, weekend plans. But there was an honesty underneath that we hadn't had in a long time. We both knew something had cracked in the foundation, and even though neither of us wanted to say it out loud, we had to admit it was partly our fault. Distance had crept in long before Jake did. Weeks passed. Then a month. Jake called once, just to say he was settling in. Said he was taking time off school, working part-time, trying to figure stuff out. I told him that was good. That I was proud of him. He asked how we were. I told him things were calmer now. He didn't push for details. I didn't offer any. We hung up with a simple "take care." And it felt okay. Tom and I didn't go back to exactly how we were before. That version of us was gone. But we started over in small ways. Dinner together. Walks in the evening. Conversations that felt real. We didn't pretend nothing happened. We just chose not to let it define us. And maybe that was the best either of us could do. The truth is, feelings don't always disappear just because you want them to. Sometimes, you just learn how to carry them without letting them control you. What happened between me and Jake, what almost happened, was real. But so was the decision to stop it, to protect what mattered more. Now, when I walk past his old room, I don't feel guilt. I feel a strange mix of gratitude and sadness. Gratitude that we didn't let things go too far. Sadness that something in us connected, even if it came at the wrong time, in the wrong way. Life doesn't always give you clear answers. But it does give you chances to choose better, to fix what's broken, to grow up, even when it's uncomfortable. So that's where the story ends for now. Maybe there's more in the future. Maybe not. But if this left you thinking or feeling anything, I'd love to know. Drop a comment and tell me what you think about the ending. Would you want a sequel? Did this story take you somewhere unexpected? And if you're still here, thanks for sticking with it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps more stories like this reach more people. I'll see you in the next one.